This is Sarah Guthrie, granddaughter of Woody Guthrie.
As I was walking that ribbon of highway, I saw above me that endless skyway. I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made for you and me. Let's sing it together. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream waters. This land was made for you and me. Oh, I've roamed and rambled, and I follow my footsteps through the sparkling sands of her diamond deserts, and all around me a voice was sounding. This land was made for you and me. All at once. This land is your land. This land is mine. To the New York Island, from the Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made for you and me. There was a great high wall there that tried to stop me.
From WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network, Chicago, 2019. Is the title of our episode on the 3rd of April 2019. Chicago held an election on Tuesday. It was an interesting election. It was an election that the voters mandated a change. Thus, Lori Lightfoot, a former federal prosecutor, a former head of various committees appointed by the Mayor Daley, and also the mayor's Emanuel, let me get this right here, was the candidate of change, whereas Preckwinkle was the candidate of Tony Preckwinkle, I guess is how you pronounce the name, was the candidate seen as part of the machine. Preckwinkle, chair of the Cook County Board, had been around a very long time. She represented Hyde Park, where the University of Chicago is located, as an alderman. She was a former school teacher at one time and had received the support of the teachers union, but it appears from the article I read that there was some switching of the sides, so to speak. Thus, you had two African-American women running for mayor of Chicago. This would be the third, Lightfoot would be the third African-American to occupy that chair. Harold Washington was the first. He was re-elected. He died in office. Thus, was the beginning of after the death of Harold, was the beginning of the unraveling of African-American politics in Chicago. There was a lot of infighting amongst various factions within the African-American community. And then came Daley, the son of Boss Daley, and Daley reigned until he literally got tired, went home. And then came Emanuel, and the disbursement of many African-Americans from Chicago. So that changed the entire situation, whereas Preckwinkle ended up campaigning on the south and west side of Chicago, and those were the wards that basically gave her 29% of the vote. And we'll go to the Chicago Tribune. We'll fall back on them for some of the numbers here, and then you'll hear from, starting with Tony Preckwinkle, and then Lori Lightfoot, her victory speech, Preckwinkle's concession speech. But I was just looking at an article by John Kloss. If I were a king of Chicago's media with unlimited supply of reporters, where would I send them on the last weekend before the Tuesday campaign? Out on the west and south sides to the African churches to see what, if anything, Toni Preckwinkle is trying to do with her last-ditch effort against the former federal prosecutor. Lightfoot is favored, and Preckwinkle, the county Democratic Party chair, is desperate and dangerous in her despair, according to him. Well, the cards had already been dealt out there. Campaign will make history because an African-American woman will become mayor after decades of mostly pink male rule. And again, Harold Washington there was the first African-American mayor, and the late Jane Byrne, remember Jane Byrne, was the first woman to be elected. Neither Lightfoot or Preckwinkle were the favorites of African-American voters. Lightfoot was relatively unknown. Preckwinkle was a known quantity, aloof, impervious. The stern school matron who taxed that can of soda, as we say in Boston, tonic, right out of your hands and for your own good. Well, and she was correct about that. She is of Hyde Park. This is Preckwinkle and not someone from the neighborhood. She made deals with the devil, the pink guys who ran things, the people she vowed to fight. According to a fascinating Tribune story the other day, she hired their kids. Well, and while she was laying people off, almost everything Preckwinkle tried backfired on her, from the clumsy dog whistle on Lightfoot's sexual orientation. I remember we covered that speech, last desperate attack ad, alleging Lightfoot covered up the deaths of 4 African-American children in 2004 fire imploding. Just last week I warned something like this would happen. Preckwinkle had gone dark with no TV ads, or no ads on TV in Chicago. Wondered why. Then there was a last-minute piece shopped around the dead kids. Preckwinkle, stubborn, angry, doubled down in a self-destructive rage and said she wouldn't stop running the ad. If she doesn't win on Tuesday, which she did not, Preckwinkle knows the pack of Democrats will turn on her after the election. It is the way of predators and Chicago politicians. They smell a weakness, blood, and their teeth get itchy. She went out of debate and said that she would liked that Laurie was a lesbian, and that backfired. It gained sympathy for Laurie. So in other words, everything went the wrong way. Old Bobby Rush got involved in the campaign. He was totally ineffective there. I remember when the black-on-black ugliness was spewed by the darlings of the progressive left after the death of Harold Washington. Rush was part of it. He helped lead it, and Richie Daley appreciated it, and Daley ended up running the town. Years later, Rush challenged for his congressional seat by a young African-American lawyer. Rush and his crew spread the word on the South Side. They said the lawyer wasn't black enough. That lawyer's name was Barack Obama. The worst thing you can do in a campaign, asked Hillary the Monster Clinton about this, is to attack the supporters of your opposition. The basket of deplorables, well, Hillary told the truth there, but it fell up short. Let me go back to the Tribune here. Big headline: Lori Lightfoot elected mayor of Chicago, making her the first African-American woman to lead the city. She had a resounding victory there. She's an African-American woman, an open gay person. She dispatched poor Tony Preckwinkle, whose candidacy had been hobbled in part by anti-government mood. There's no doubt about that. You could feel it. An ongoing corruption investigation at City Hall. Lightfoot started last April as a long shot to replace the city's clouded politics with inclusive change. Well, she's on that track now. With roughly 97% of the city's precincts reporting, Lightfoot had won all 50 of the wards, winning 74% of the official vote to 26%. To Preckwinkle, a 28-year office holder who prior to 2 or 8 years as the county chief executive served 19 as an aldermanic person from Hyde Park. Lightfoot will be sworn in on the 25th of, on the 20th of May 2019 as the 56th mayor of Chicago. She is actually from Ohio. Messiaen, Ohio is some small steel town where she grew up there. She went to University of Michigan and on to Chicago's University of Chicago's Law School, and you'll hear from her about her parents, etc. Preckwinkle, and this is an old argument here. It's been raged many times. The mayor is not an entry-level position. Well, it doesn't matter. Both of these candidates were clouded up with some of the past. The mayor, president, mayor of a city, a president, etc., they're surrounded by staff. How effective the general staff is usually determines where the administration goes. If you go back to the DJ Trump transition, it was an amateur hour. The DJ Trump administration was an amateur hour. Doors were, people were coming, people were going, and a lot of that was in the political landscape in Washington. The Republicans had the House, the Senate, and the presidency, so they had everything, and still could not effectively provide leadership to the country, with the exception of the massive tax cut. But that was a business imperative. Those things usually do pass. But if you look at other things, there have been all sorts of miscues. Trump and his so-called closing of the border, he hasn't done it. The worst mistake a politician can make is say, I'm going to close the border, and not close the border. He hasn't closed the border. And then he made a pronouncement the other day that the Republican Party would be the party of health care, which is lunacy. But they're not going to get around to it till 2020, an election year. That means they won't get around to it unless he were re-elected in November of next year. That is an actual fact. The fighting goes on and will continue. Incidentally, the National Action Network is holding their convention in New York. They hold it every April. The Reverend Dr. Sharpton, of course, presiding over that organization. And they'll have the Democratic candidates will all appear there and will address them, and we'll cover that convention. Now, unfortunately, this year we won't be able to get there, but we are covering it. We normally cover it every year. Our press credentials are in order. So thus, with the Chicago election, we can close the book on it. It was going in a different direction. I talked to Emma Young, Chicago ad lady, and she was a bit apprehensive about it. I now note that Emma voted for Lightfoot. But these characters that were in the race there, they had old Bill Daley. He was the brother of Boss, the son of Boss Daley, the brother of the Mayor Daley. They had Susan Mendoza. She was a controller. And they had Gary Chino. He had been the president of the school board, but what did everybody in was old Edwin Burke, been around forever. The FBI raided his office on a take-back situation, and the unfortunate situation there was Preckwinkle was caught up in that situation. They got Burke for soliciting a $10,000 campaign contribution that had been intended for Preckwinkle. Well, that did Preckwinkle in right there. So the old get along, stay along scheme didn't work out. Jesus Chuy Garcia, who is in the Congress, he endorsed her. So did the Right Reverend Willie Wilson. Now, this is consolidated support. Chicago Teachers Union, Service Workers International remained major backers. She had endorsed. She had endorsements for much of the city's African American political establishment. But Preckwinkle struggled to draw little in the way of substantial new support beyond the endorsement of the Teamsters Union and the hip-hop artist Chance the Rapper. Well, Chance the Rapper hasn't been picking, as they say, horses that ran a very good races. So basically, Preckwinkle was relegated to the south and some of the west side there. Preckwinkle received few endorsements from sitting aldermen, 13. Then Lightfoot had 16 at the time. Left voters to wonder. Tuesday, one of Preckwinkle's city council allies pleaded for a room full of residents at the someplace at Sullivan to get out to the polls. If she loses, I'm going to have a hard time getting stuff for you. That was Walter Burnett. Well, I guess he'll have a hard time getting things for you. For her part, Lightfoot never wavered from her message of changing City Hall, as Preckwinkle frequently reminded her opponent during the campaign. Change is not easy. There's no doubt about that. Change is indeed not easy. From Vox, let's see, what do they have to say? Chicago became the largest city to elect an African American woman that is openly gay, making history there, is what their headline is. She had held, this is Lightfoot, appointed positions related to police oversight and accountability under Mayor Emanuel and Mayor Daley. She'd previously served as an assistant U.S. attorney, most recently a senior equity partner at Mayor Brown LLP. She announced the candidacy back in May. So in other words, she was connected, period. Preckwinkle, with endorsements, gained the backing of, let me see here, Preckwinkle tried to cast Lightfoot as a political novice. Well, she tried that. Many were attached to her clear state appeal during the race. Lightfoot outpaced Preckwinkle with endorsements and gained the backing of the media and the business community. That is kind of troubling. Anytime a candidate has the backing of the business community, watch out. And candidates who didn't make the runoff, meanwhile, the teachers union endorsed Preckwinkle, and so did she was a former teacher, incidentally. I thought they changed horses, but Chance the Rapper and Bobby Rush, for what it was worth. Lightfoot's primary proposals, according to the Tribune, included increasing access to affordable housing, creating an office for public safety, and the state tax transfer for homelessness, also back to abolishing the U.S. Customs Enforcement Administration, which itself So in other words, it was a mixture of things that she endorsed, progressive situations there. The old Jesse Smollett, I don't know, in which the actor alleged he was a victim of a hate crime. This Van Dyke character is now in prison. Got 6 years in prison for killing Laquan McDonald there. So the city is, of course, facing financial future. Its contribution of 4 major pension funds require about $1 billion by 1923. So she'll need to draft a new city budget that fills in the $252 million deficit by October. So she's got her things that she has to do there. So again, that is sort of what goes. Let me get Mr. Page in here. Does Biden's Gropagate matter? Let the voters decide, is what declares Page. He's on the editorial board of the Chicago Tribune. I was ready to call former Vice President Biden's heinous scandal, Gropagate, until I found out that Canadian writer had beat me to it. Then I came up with a label and such tabloid headlines as Gropa Nopa. Well, anyway, this is when an 18-year-old allegation against Justin Trudeau resurfaced by an anonymous female journalist. And this is something that comes in these campaigns. I bring this episode up now because charges are similar that the two women have made against Biden in recent days. The old allegations, like those against Trudeau and Biden, have taken on new life since the fall of Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, the Me Too movement, etc. Well, the Me Too movement is out there, but part of your problem that you come up with all the time there is what happened with Al Franken. But you let these charges, many of them from years in the past, upset a candidate and not look at the candidate's platform, his political ideas. Having covered Biden off and on since the first short-lived presidential campaign, that was in 1987, I witnessed a close-up, relentless Biden charm that leaves people praising Joe being a Joe, good old Uncle Joe, etc. Well, different type of campaigning, the hugs and all that sort of thing. And as the world knows it too, by way of a video of creepy Uncle Joe appeared doing photo ops to move in on women and their daughters, massaging their shoulders, whispering in their ears, etc. Well, but it's when you do a lot of this, not unusual. A Connecticut woman, Ann Lapos, told the Hartford paper that Biden put his hand around her neck as in a 2009 political fundraiser and rubbed her nose. Okay. That's 10 years ago. These things come out here. These complaints have taken a new urgency after the punitive atmosphere of the Me Too. The resignation of Al Franken. He should have not resigned and went to a hearing. Nonetheless, Franken's resignation under pressure from fellow Democrats, that was led by Christine Gillibrand of New York. She suffered a backlash from Democratic donors and others who were upset that she helped push out a rising star like Franken, Franken, as he departed, I wrote that for all of his victorious moves, the rising and reckoning demanded by the Me Too movement could backfire if we who believe in equal rights for women don't calibrate our outrage. Every crime doesn't call for capital punishment, I wrote. And let me just finish this up. In other words, in a word, that's why is it Biden, who has been leading the Democratic preference polls decides to run, he would be wise to keep his hands to himself and let the voters decide his fate. One particular powerful voice in the circle, that's Nancy Pelosi, stood up for Biden on Monday and said whatever else we may think of the allegations, they don't disqualify one for running for president. That is actually true there. I noticed even our pal out on the West Coast, Sandra there, pointed out in a little piece, we'll call it, about Biden, and she basically said, well, she kind of hated to say it, but again, though, that is politics, and I'm not certain who she supports. She's not said, but Kamala Harris lurks in the bushes, so to speak, and we don't know. Some very sad news here from the out of Tennessee. White power graffiti defaces historic Hollander Research and Education Center. In fact, it was burned down. The main office burned down last week. Was home to innumerable documents, recorded speeches, artifacts from the movement that were lost in the fire. That is a very sad situation. Now, this this white power situation in the parking lot. The Hollander Center, for a long time, Dr. King was there. They helped organize the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955. It's interesting. The Klan never burnt the place down, but the new operators did. Imagine to burn it down. The Hollander Research Center. I think we've done something on that. The death of their former director there. They were known 1959 in Newmarket, Tennessee is where they were. Let me just spend a minute and we'll go to sports here. And they still have workshops there, and no doubt they will be rebuilding their center soon here. Language justice, participatory action research, some of the culture work, intergenerational organizing is what they do. And a nice picture of them. We'll have on them later. Let's go now to, well, the Final Four. We'll have something on All About Sports about the Final Four. Of course, Duke is out of it now, and they are slated to play this weekend. The Final Four, what we have slated up here, because Michigan State will be there as a part of the Final Four. We look at the top four. Let's see what we got going here. Final Four, because this weekend they'll go to the Upper Midwest State of Minnesota. And some of the players here, the Final Four, various Final Fours they're talking about here. Michigan State, the Spartans, they will be here. The Texas Tech Red Raiders, they'll be matched up against Texas Tech. Who can pull this out? Well, the Red Raiders have a pretty good team. We'll have more on this. The Texas Tech Red Raiders versus Michigan. They're a pretty good record here. And we'll get into this a little later. Virginia, a little different team here, and the Virginia Cavaliers against Auburn. Don't know very much about Auburn or Virginia. Hadn't been following it that closely. Onto the NBA very quickly here. The Thunder 119-103 over the Lakers in OKC. They were playing there. The Spurs of San Antonio 117-111 over the Hawks. The Rockets 130-105 over the Kings, and finally the Warriors 116-105 over the Nuggets. On to the game of America. Baseball Tigers and Yankees. Tigers 3-1 over the Yankees. Brewers and Reds. Brewers are 4-3. The Phillies keep on winning 8-2 over the Nationals. The Orioles and Toronto are 2-1. They're in a rebuilding year. The Rays 4-0. They shut out the Rockies in Tampa. The Mets and Marlins. It was the Mets 6-5. The Astros and Rangers, Battle of Texas, I guess you would call it. Rangers 6-4. And in 10, the Twins and Royals in Kansas City. Twins 5-4. The Red Sox were shut out by the Athletics in Oakland 1-0. D-backs 8-5 over the Padres of San Diego. Dodgers win 6-5 over the Giants, and finally the Mariners 2-1 over the Angels. And on to the National Hockey League we go. The Predators and Sabres. Predators 3-2. The Bruins are 6-2 over the Blue Jackets. The Hurricanes 4-1 over the Maple Leafs. The Canadiens are 4-2 over the Lightning. The Red Wings 4-1 over our Penguins. And the Wild 5-1 over the Winnipeg Jets. I kind of like that name. The Stars are 6-2 over the Flyers, and the Avalanche 6-2 over the Oilers. Sounds like I'm on repeat here. The Canucks, 4-2 over the Sharks, and finally the Kings 3-1 over the Coyotes. That will do it for Chicago 2019. And the big matchup in Tampa, I thought we'd have to go over. This is the women's Final Four. Notre Dame will be there. UConn will be there. The Oregon Ducks will show up. And Baylor, they come and they go. Nonetheless, this is Boston Red in the Jerry Pippin broadcast booth on the 3rd of April, 2019. Good day, Chicago. The Carl Sandburg poem, the butcher, the baker, etc. there. And we'll go out of here with This Land Is Your Land by Woody Guthrie's granddaughter. Sarah Guthrie will be using it more and more. Or perhaps we'll come in with it. We'll make
Good evening, everybody. A few minutes ago, I called Lori Lightfoot to congratulate her after this hard-fought campaign. This may not be the outcome we wanted, but while I may be disappointed, I'm not disheartened. For one thing, this is clearly an historic night. Not long ago, 2 African American women vying for this position would have been unthinkable. And while it may be true that we took different paths to get here, tonight is about the path forward. For I still believe in the power of public service. It's why I've dedicated so much of my life to it. It's why I'll continue to dedicate my life to it. I wake up every day, including tomorrow, just as I have for the last 25 years, fighting to advocate for and work for and fighting for my constituents. That's my motivation. And I will take it with me as I proudly continue to serve as your Cook County Board President. unthinkable change a reality. And there's more we can do. We expanded health care access to hundreds of thousands of residents. But if we want truly healthy communities, we have to move beyond the walls of a doctor's office. We've overhauled cash bonds so that thousands fewer people stand behind bars simply because they're too poor to pay for their freedom. We must continue to work collaboratively with all the stakeholders, especially our community partners, to address the factors that bring too many of our African American and Latinx residents in contact with the criminal justice system in the first place. We'll continue to fight for economic equity and infrastructure improvements, and we'll reach for new goals around sustainability, demand more opportunities for the underemployed and the unemployed. At the end of the day, that's what's truly historic about this election. It's not simply gender or race, but about our values. This campaign was about real issues of working class families throughout our neighborhoods. This was a campaign where support for an elected school board was a benchmark, where a commitment to affordable housing was a requirement, where we focus not solely on big business, but real living wages, where we didn't just talk about being a world-class city. We acknowledged the long-term institutional inequities that stop many of our communities from feeling that they were ever truly part of our city and what it has to offer. That's historic. That's something to be proud of. While those issues didn't always dominate the press, they did shape this campaign. That's why the work we've done, the values we fought for, that doesn't end tonight. And that's because of you. My thanks to my fellow public servants, our faith leaders, and community organizations, the countless individuals who donated, called, knocked doors, talked to neighbors and friends, and came out to vote. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful to have earned your support. To you, keep fighting. Nothing worth fighting for is ever easy, but it's always, always, always worth it to fight for what you believe in. And I'm going to keep fighting too. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Chicago. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. A few moments ago, I spoke with Tony Preckwinkle. In this election, Tony and I were competitors, but our differences are nothing compared to what we can achieve together. Now that it's over, I know we will work together for the city that we both love. Today, you did more than make history. You created a movement for change. You know, when we started this journey 11 months ago, nobody gave us much of a chance. We were up against powerful interest, a powerful machine, and a powerful mayor. But I remembered something Martin Luther King said when I was very young. Faith, he said, is taking the first step when you can't see the staircase. Well, we couldn't see the whole staircase when we started this journey, but we had faith, an abiding faith in this city, its people, and in its future. So we took that first step. And as Father Mike says, we let our faith overcome our fears. And look at where we are today. Just look at us. We still have faith. We are still determined, and with this mandate for change, now we're going to take the next steps together. Together, we can and will finally put the interests of our people, all of our people, ahead of the interests of a powerful few. Together, we can and will make Chicago a place where your zip code doesn't determine your destiny. And that means we can and we will make our streets, all of our streets, safe again. We can and we will give every single one of our children, all of our children, access to the high-quality education they deserve. We can and we will give our neighborhoods, all of our neighborhoods, the same time and attention that we give the downtown. And we won't just invest in our neighborhoods. We can and we will make sure our neighborhoods, and all of our neighborhoods, and all of our neighbors are invested in each other. This is not us versus them, or neighborhoods versus downtown. We are in this together, and we will grow together. We can and we will build trust between our people and our brave police officers so that the communities and police trust each other, not fear each other. We can and we will break this city's endless cycle of corruption. And never again, never, ever allow politicians to profit from elected positions. Together, we can and we will remake Chicago thriving, prosperous, better, stronger, fairer for everyone. Over the last 11 months, every single day, I've been reminded, sometimes painfully, that our campaign, our work, matters. I've seen the tears of mothers who have lost their children to the city's plague of senseless gun violence. Maria Pike's son, Ricky, a double honors student at Le Cordon Bleu, was gunned down at the age of 24. Michelle Dowdy's son, Malcolm, a veteran of the U.S. Coast Guard, was killed by a stray bullet blindly fired into a crowd at age 33. And Milagros Burgos' daughter, Alexandra, was sitting in a friend's house when a bullet came through the window and killed her. And she was just 18 years old. These mothers cried, and then with courage and determination, turned their tears into a demand for change, setting up organizations like Moms Demand Action. Our duty as a city, as leaders, as neighbors, as people is to stand with these mothers and children and put an end to this gun violence once and for all. We must say, enough is enough. I've met small business owners who want to start or grow their businesses, but they say it takes 2 years just to get a permit or a license or a sign. These business owners are part of the economic engine of our city. They serve their neighborhoods and create jobs. They just want a city government that's a help and not a hindrance. It's not too much to ask. And so we're going to help our small businesses and not stand in their way. And I've also met families from our immigrant communities, people from Mexico, people from Central and South America, people from the Middle East, Asia, and Africa, people from all over the world. And these people are scared. They're scared of the climate of hate and fear, fanned and promoted by a culture in Washington, D.C., and from the White House, in the capital of our own country. They're our neighbors, and they're scared of a knock on the door in the middle of the night, followed by agents coming in to haul them away. For 150 years, Chicago has welcomed generations of immigrants from all over the world and all over America. They built this city and made it what it is today. Now it is our solemn duty as a city, as people, as neighbors, to stand up for our immigrant families, to protect them, and stand against hate. And we will make sure Chicago is a place that will welcome immigrants for the next 150 years. Recently, a student heading off to college asked me an important question. When I graduate, he asked, why should I come back here to Chicago? What will you do in 4 years to convince me to come back? Questions like this are in the minds of a lot of people. Should I move here? Should I stay? Our duty is to make sure the answer is a resounding yes. Everything, literally everything, depends on it. A shrinking city, which is where we are right now, just will not do. To thrive, Chicago must grow. It simply must. And if we make our streets safer, our schools better, our neighborhoods stronger, our businesses, large and small, more prosperous, then people will want to stay and they will want to move here. If we work together to solve our toughest challenges, Chicago will grow again, and we cannot afford to fail. Out there tonight, a lot of little girls and boys are watching. They're watching us. And they're seeing the beginning of something, well, a little bit different. They're seeing a city reborn, a city where it doesn't matter what color you are, and where it surely doesn't matter how tall you are. Where it doesn't matter who you love, just as long as you love Let me say that again. Where it doesn't matter who you love, just as long as you love with all your heart. In the Chicago we will build together, we will celebrate our differences. We will embrace our uniqueness, and we will make certain that all have every opportunity to succeed. Thank you. Every child out there should know this. Each of you, one day, can be the mayor of Chicago. Want to know why? Just look right here. One day, you will stand on my shoulders, as I stand on the shoulders of so many. The shoulders of strong black women like Ida B. Wells, Gwendolyn Brooks, and Annie Ruth Lowry. The shoulders of LGBTQ plus trailblazers like Dr. Ron Sable, Vernita Gray, and Art Johnston. And the shoulders of political giants like the late, great Harold Washington. And kids, you will stand on the shoulders of your families, just as I have. Now, my parents didn't have it easy. My dad got really sick and slipped into a coma for a year, a whole year, and woke up without the ability to hear anything. He lived the rest of his life with his disability and worked as a barber and a janitor and put up with the racism in our small, segregated steel town. My mom worked low-wage jobs in mental hospitals and nursing homes. My parents didn't have much money, but they had their dignity and their dreams. Dreams for their children, dreams for me. They taught me the value of honesty, decency, hard work, and education. And they gave me faith, the faith that put me where I am today. My mom is watching this tonight. With more than a little pride in her little girl. My dad isn't with us anymore. But Dad, wherever you are, look at your daughter and look at everyone here and look at our great city. Thank you, Dad. Your sacrifices have been born anew. We made it. And I sure wouldn't have made it without my wife, Amy, and our daughter, Vivian. I want to thank you both for your endless inspiration, your support at the toughest times, and your undying love. You are my all, my everything. Now, there are too many people to thank individually, but I've got to mention a few. First, I have to thank our great campaign staff. Those who have been with us from the very beginning and those who have joined us along the way. Your efforts have been tireless, determined, and your enthusiasm contagious. I am honored by your sacrifice and your service, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. And I must also thank our incredible volunteers. If you gave an hour or 1,000. It all mattered and helped propel us to this moment. I must also thank our friends in organized labor, the backbone of this great city. You truly make Chicago work like none other, and I thank you. And I particularly want to thank all those teachers out there who have supported me. Thank you. And of course, I want to thank our family and close circle of friends here and elsewhere. You sustain me and Amy and Vivian today and every day. Now, my friends, what I want you to do is grab the hand of the person next to you. You may be strangers, but in this room, in this city, we are all neighbors. I want you to feel that power, neighbor to neighbor, that comes when we unite and join together as one Chicago, indivisible and united for all. When I was a little girl, I remember singing the song, "This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine." We've said it's time to bring in the light, and it's sure shining on all of us tonight. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Thank you very much. God bless you all, and God bless Chicago.